Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. This is my weekly announcement and also check in as promised. I know that yesterday a lot of you had some technical difficulties with the discussion boards. If you weren't able to get on the discussion board, I'm not penalizing you for that. It looks like we fixed the issue. So the discussion boards from this full week are all open now until Friday at midnight. So if it's easier for you, you can go ahead and email me your responses so that you get credit. Or you can go ahead and repost on the page and everything should be available. It looks like just about all of you posted last night, so moving forward, we should be fine. Pay close attention to your syllabus. You'll be doing discussion boards only 2 days a week. Keeping in mind that normally during a 4 week course, you'd actually be meeting in person for 3 or 4 days. But for this course, you only need to respond on the discussion boards 2 days a week. Be sure to go back into the introductions and say hi to some of your peers. I want to say, I think Victoria's person I met through the discussion board, and you said you're a pre-vet student. So I hope you get what you desire from this class and learning about cultural competency. Also, we have another student that mentioned he's from Russia. We have a student who's a Langston graduate. I know we have a health promotion student. One of you said that you had not had a health course before. Really excited to have you on board. So welcome again. Some of you all emailed me yesterday. I responded to you as quickly as I could and was still trying to deal with our technical issue. So I hope you know that you can email me anytime during these 4 weeks and I'll respond to you as soon as I possibly can. So those are a couple of things. One thing to help you that's really important with the discussion boards, make sure you also are thinking in terms of the readings within your response. I did see that this week on most of your postings, so be sure to keep up the good work there. For those of you who aren't used to an online course, just be reminded that the discussion boards are a big part of your participation grade during these 4 weeks. So if you haven't posted at all, which I see a few of you all haven't, you'll want to attend to that to optimize your final grade. Also, I'm looking at a few notes here. So I'm looking down. A few of you all mentioned you'll be doing some internships. I think Deshana is doing one in Costa Rica, which is amazing. So I want to mention during this class, we'll be talking about a lot of different groups that are affected by health issues. And so I think even if a specific group of interest you want to know about is not mentioned, I definitely think you can apply these principles, because I'm teaching about principles of cultural competency in this course, to whatever group that you may be working with. But feel free to bring some of those things out during the discussions as well. A couple of other things. One of you I mentioned, by the way, all of your illustrations were exemplary. Everything from thinking about a Native American medicine man being a part of the medical system. Also, Jeremy mentioned a dilemma in the ER of a man who wanted his wife to only be seen by a male doctor. And I personally have also worked in the ER, Jeremy, so I can only imagine how difficult, challenging that would be. And what does cultural competency mean in those circumstances? Where do we draw the line, so to speak, when other patients may be needing care and things may seem to be held up by one particular situation? Other illustrations that you all mentioned yesterday was the idea of matching cultural characteristics to public health practice. What does that look like in terms of cultural competency? I think Monica may have mentioned that. So you all doing a great job so far. Again, applications to your own field is going to be really paramount to this course. And you can always email me or even ask a question on the discussion board in general that might invoke even further conversation. We learn more about cultural competency and ourselves through these types of discussions and discourse. One of you mentioned the idea that personally mediated racism is an issue today. Absolutely. And we still do have the institutional racism, of course. And what I mean by that is we know that things like slavery are over and the colored only signs that were out way back in the 60s. But we do have issues, for example, of housing discrimination, where people still may not be welcome, so to speak, in certain neighborhoods through certain practices. We also have it, believe it or not, this whole idea of the income gap across the country, and you can look up these stats for yourself. Racial minorities, sometimes international populations, women, all across the board are paid much less for the same jobs as men, no matter what type of job it is, whether it's a custodian or whether it's a college professor like myself or whether it is a CEO. In general, women are paid less and racial minorities are paid less. So it seems that this institutionalized racism that continues, because that word simply means that things are continuing on through an institution, also becomes a part of this personally mediated racism. So something for us to think about. But again, I'm excited about this class because I consider all of us to be part of the solution. But we can't be part of a solution if we don't know what the problems are and how to acknowledge those. And so I'm hoping that through this class, some of your thoughts and opinions and ways to solve these issues will be fueled now through the facts, through some of the statistics that you're looking at, and thinking about people behind those statistics as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention, Bryce made a really poignant comment in response to a post. He mentioned that we're all part of the same species, so we should all be treated fairly. And Bryce, I thought that was a remarkable statement, and that's the heart of everything that we want to do within public health. And also shout out to pre-vet people, aviation people, nutritional sciences, all these different majors that are part of this course. That's what we really want to do. So last but not least, I wanted to give you a definition of cultural competency that I hope you'll include in your reflection papers. Also, please note, I would expect that you've watched the video lecture when you write your reflection papers. This whole idea of cultural competency boils down to one thing, basically, and that is respect and humility. Respect means that we respect other cultures, knowing that we're never going to understand everything about every culture and every subgroup of every culture. But we have enough respect to take time to ask the right, respectful questions and to listen and to see what can we do within reason so that we all feel respected. And more importantly, we can get the medical care that we need. So that's what cultural competency really means. And it's a removal of assumptions. We all have assumptions. I have assumptions. You have assumptions. But we want to ask the proper questions and get the right information so that we can act off of what is real and not just our assumptions. Last but not least, I want to mention something. There were some comments and questions and thoughts about health disparities and how do we reflect these, what's going on in our own personal experiences. And I wanted to give you an example of why it's important for us to really get the facts on these issues. And you all feel free to shout back to me, tell me what you think, even on discussion boards. I'll probably open one discussion board, just kind of a free forum. Let's talk about things. You know, what are you thinking about cultural competence? But the statement I want to make, and this is going to give you an idea of the facts. Right now in our country, we all know chronic disease is running rampant, right? We have diabetes, we have high blood pressure, we have some of these issues associated with obesity. We have our young people intaking way too much sugar, right? In many cases, we know these things, we studied these things. But one of the things that can happen if we don't really think about it is we can assume that these things are associated with specific groups. For example, we could assume that when we see someone who has high blood pressure or diabetes, that they must be poor, right? We could assume that. You could make those assumptions. Or maybe they have low education. And that could be true. And when we look at research, some of those things are true of people who are diabetic or even who have high blood pressure. But I wanted to read some stats to you from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention out of Atlanta and show you how we can actually inadvertently perpetuate racism and health disparities if we don't know the facts. So what I wanted to mention is that from the latest stats, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, We have Caucasians are white Americans in this country have about 33.9% hypertension, diagnosed hypertension in this country. 27.8% of Mexican Americans have been diagnosed as hypertensive. And then we have 43% of Black or African Americans are considered to be hypertensive. And this stat that I looked at, I didn't even see some of the other many diverse groups in our country that really need to be included in these stats. But just going across these things, these three classifications, you're listening to those numbers, right? We started with 33 to 27 to 43. Now, many people would say, well, so we get it. African Americans and Blacks have really high rates of high blood pressure. Well, our differences between 27, 33, and 43% are really not that great. So what we want to focus on, the key factor here is that according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 in 3 Americans are hypertensive. So if that's the case, then even though many of those different groups of people have many different habits and things that may contribute to high blood pressure, it seems to me we have a American cultural issue, not necessarily a racial cultural issue. So that's just an example of what we should think about when we're considering these health disparities so that we don't make assumptions and we can consider what's really going on. And we can ask different people, individuals, we may be working with them, or do more research into population health about what's really behind these differences and not just necessarily certain broad ideas that we may have about what could be occurring. Perhaps a lot of us in America have some interesting food habits and not just certain groups, since 1 in 3 people are being affected by hypertension. So that's just one example. Those are all of the announcements that I have for today. I've extended all of the discussion boards until midnight for the rest of the summer. For the rest of this 4-week course. So I hope that's helpful to you with maybe your travels or different schedules that you may have as well. So I am responding to some of you on your discussion boards. If you get a moment, just let me know that you read it. Or whatever, and let's continue the discussion. And I'm looking forward to the remainder of our 4 weeks. Take care. I look forward to reading your reflection papers. Send me an email if you have any trouble at all with those. Thank you and have a great weekend.